I have a really exciting one for you today. So we just tested our RAG system GroundX on an open source data set called DocBench, which is designed for comprehensively testing how RAG systems can understand complex sets of documents. And we did really well. We didn't only do better than OpenAI and Anthropic, we actually did better than people. So we have a RAG system on our hands that's better than people at understanding complex documents. This is wild. I'm super excited to get into it in this episode of RAG Masters.
Hey everybody, I'm Neil.
And I'm Daniel.
And this is another episode of RAG Masters, the world's first only, maybe ever, show about Retrieval-Augmented Generation. Daniel, how you doing?
I'm doing great. And I'm super excited because I'm the captain now. I put my captain hat on. I'm taking us on a tour through DocBench and fancy multimodal RAG and superhuman performance. It's very exciting.
I'm super stoked because you've done all the research here. You've done all the work to match up GroundX into the DocBench RAG testing protocol versus really tough competitors, OpenAI, Anthropic. I'm not sure. I don't remember if Mistral's in there or not, but a lot of other great competitors. Obviously, OpenAI and Anthropic are big time, and of course, human beings, which are still in many ways superior, thankfully, to large language models and RAG systems. But maybe not for long, and maybe not in this test, because GroundX had some kind of amazing results on really complex documents and doing RAG ingest and RAG search and the whole pipeline and getting to great answers. So I'm going to let you roll. I will hang back and be comic relief because I'm really interested in the results that you found in this DocBench analysis.
Yeah, let's get into it. I'm super stoked. So this all comes from an article, which is called GroundX achieves superhuman performance in document comprehension on DocBench. Kind of a mouthful. Takes the academic route to titles rather than the SEO approach. So there's a data set called DocBench, and we were better at comprehending documents than humans were, which is kind of insane. First, I want to cover what is DocBench, fundamentally, how does it work? I want to talk about our results on running GroundX on DocBench. And then I kind of want to talk about testing as a whole, like how RAG gets tested and maybe some weak points and how it needs to evolve in the future. So first of all, what is DocBench? So DocBench is a data set of documents and question answer pairs. So there are a bunch of documents, and then there's some question about some content in each of those documents, and then a corresponding answer that's accurate. So these are human curated answers that are, designed to test a RAG system. This is an example. It's big, complicated documents, and then each document has a bunch of questions and answers and some metadata. Obviously, this is a ton of information to look at, so I kind of zoomed into one particular example. So this is a table that's in a particular figure, and there's a question that's about that figure, and then there's an answer. I believe the question is, which language model had the lowest perplexity? And according to table 3, and it was KGLM with 44.1. So that is a human curated answer based on the question and document. Then the idea is you collect a lot of these documents in question answer pairs, right? So there's a variety of different documents about a variety of different types of information. They have a bunch of question answer pairs associated with each document. And then you can test your RAG system. So what you do is you give your RAG system a document and a question, and then you get back an AI answer. Then the way DocBench works is it uses something called LLM as a judge. So LLM as a judge looks at the question, the human curated answer, and the AI answer, and then use an LLM to score, hey, how well did this AI system do at answering the question? And that's really convenient for a variety of reasons. Neil, I'm curious kind of what you're thinking up until this point. We're covering a lot of information.
Well, look, I think there's things that we've searched long and far to find a good RAG evaluation tool. I still think there's nothing perfect out there, but DocBench has been, we think, is the closest to a really good framework. Now, why is that? Well, first of all, there's real documents in the data set. It's not just, humans have not extracted the text from the documents before the test, and then you're just testing yourself against these text strings, which completely ruins the first part of RAG, which is ingesting complex documents and understanding them. So this data set has real documents. Step one, really in their favor, and they're nice. They're multimodal documents. They've got tables, they've got graphics. Again, big in their, great in their favor. I don't love that this LLM as a judge, because we found that that judge isn't really as good as humans. You're going to get into that, I think, at the end of this presentation, where the LLM as a judge made mistakes, but for reasons of consistency, we still accepted the score, even though we think our score is even higher if you had a human as a judge. But overall, I think we found DocBench is a great place to start for real RAG evaluation. So I'm excited that we did this today.
Yeah, me too. It has been a cool data set, and it is interesting if you comb through the data sets like we have. It's surprising, as Neil mentioned, how few of them actually have documents in them. A lot of them that are kind of even centered around documents. They kind of presuppose that parsing is already done, which is really common and has been a common paradigm for the last couple of years. But as we move towards sort of more visually oriented parsing strategies that use AI, these data sets that are kind of end to end can be surprisingly sparse, more sparse than you might expect, which is kind of interesting. So that's the data set. You have a bunch of documents, question answer pairs. You give your RAG system the documents, then the question, it generates an answer, and then you do LLM as a judge to evaluate how well your RAG system does. So how well did we do? Well, I think we did really well, which is, I'm excited about it. So this is the multimodality sort of distribution. By the way, these are from LLM as a judge. So these are the LLM, its standardized way that it was developed in DocBench. It's analyzing GroundX versus all the other approaches. And we did Superhuman as well as some other approaches in the textual modality. So asking questions about text within a document. Now, it's maybe useful to say, like, what do we mean by Superhuman? Basically, they gave humans a bunch of these questions and had them, try to answer them within a reasonable, amount of time, a reasonable amount of knowledge. And humans got some of them wrong. They misinterpreted documents. They didn't understand documents. So there are a variety of AI approaches that did better than humans in textual modality. Yeah. Only GroundX, though, was better than humans in multimodality. So analyzing figures, analyzing tables. You might kind of wonder, how is it that the system is better? If I gave Neil one question in DocBench and all of the time in the world to answer that question, he'd almost certainly get it right. But the thing is, humans get tired. they get lazy. You'd be surprised how quickly, when you're dealing with these large amounts of text, how quickly the human capacity can devolve and miss simple things and gloss over things. So it's actually surprisingly better to it's surprisingly easy to be better than humans at something that's so knowledge intensive when you're dealing with large amounts of questions.
I wouldn't say easy, because look who's on the other side, not as good as humans. Our friends over at OpenAI and Anthropic and other places. So it's not necessarily easy to beat humans, but it's possible to beat humans. And humans aren't perfect, I think, is maybe the point. They're far from it. And one of the things I think about all the time when delivering these, AI RAG systems to folks is, our job is to be as good or better at humans, but much faster at a process. Humans aren't perfect. AI is not perfect, not yet, but that's okay. But it's great to see us on the better side of this ledger in this case. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it is super exciting. It really kind of flips the script for me, because my conceptualization of RAG up until this point has been, it's just for faster. It's not for better.
Yeah.
But that status quo is kind of changing, which I think is exciting and pretty cool. So I want to dig into some results a little bit. So there are a variety of question types. There's multimodal F, which is figures. There's multimodal F, which is tables. There's text-only questions. We talked about those. And then we also have unanswerable questions, which are questions that we gave a RAG system that the answer was there is no answer. And you might notice in the results, we did pretty badly on unanswerable questions. And I'd like to kind of dig into some of those unanswerable questions to kind of highlight some of the issues with LLM as a judge. So this is one particular answer. The question was given, how does Toyota envision the role of cars contributing to society's development, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, this question was posed towards a document that didn't have an answer to that question. So the desired answer, which is curated by humans, was not mentioned. And you'll notice the GroundX answer has 5 period. The provided document does not contain information about Toyota or its vision regarding the role of cars in society, et cetera. So GroundX got this question right. It has this weird 5 in the beginning, which is a little weird. But it seems like a human would look at this and say, it got it right. I don't know what's up with this 5, but it got the answer right. The reason that 5 is there is because DocBench batch evaluates. So to save money, essentially what they do is they give the LLM as a judge a set of answers. Then the LLM evaluates all of those answers simultaneously by constructing an enumerated list. So that enumeration popped up just because of the way DocBench does its thing. There's a 5 in the beginning. And then I guess the LLM as a judge said, you said there wasn't an answer, but it's clearly saying 5. So this one was judged as incorrect. And clearly this isn't a problem of GroundX. This is a failing of LLM as a judge and how it fits within, the larger scope.
And I guess our answer was almost too correct. I mean, we were correctly reading the weird data that the test put into the data set in the QA pairs, essentially.
Yeah, you can interpret it that way for sure. This isn't a dig at the sort of people who made DocBench. I want to get into that. I think I want to get into that and kind of elaborate on that a little bit more when we wrap up. So,
but maybe you should get into it. We'll explain more about it. But I think the net for me is that GroundX got downgraded on a significant number of answers that it got correct, but just because of the strangeness of the test and because we didn't modify GroundX for the test, we tried not to change what we were doing to fit the test. It just got, we were incorrectly scored on some things that we shouldn't have. We still scored better than everybody else, but it would have been even better if there wasn't this weird quirk in how the text was worded.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this is another good example, maybe a little less on the weird side, but more of like the debatable side. So this question was interesting. Was the Emergencies Act given royal assent in July 21st, 1988? The answer is not mentioned because it's not mentioned in the document. But the GroundX answer, which is using a GPT style model, I think it was GPT-4 or maybe it was 01. I can't recall. It's in the documentation. But we used GroundX RAG to retrieve information from the document. Then we passed that information to a model to give it context to answer the question. But the AI model has learned stuff, right? It's seen the internet, it's learned things. And the Emergencies Act, if you Google it, was given royal assent on July 21st, 1988. So this is incorrect from the LLM as a judge perspective because the information was not relevant in the document, but it was a correct answer intrinsically. And this kind of gets to some of the really tricky prompting strategies. Like LLMs, the ones made by OpenAI, they're designed to answer your questions. So it's really hard to make them not do that. So it's almost like a weird prompting thing. And then you get, okay, so cool. So now you can adjust the prompts to make it less likely to do that for the specific test. But now you're adjusting your system to be in line with this data set, which is fundamentally not how you do things. So it's kind of another example of this. You can try to manipulate your system so that it aligns with the data set, but then you're manipulating your system so it aligns with the data set. It's not really clear as an industry how much prompt engineering really should be going in when you're doing this type of evaluation.
Right. Like if you use when our customers use GroundX in the real world, they very often will put in the system prompt. If the answer can't be found in the context, meaning the content in the database, don't answer, or say some version of not mentioned or ask me something else. That's normally how we do a production system, and you don't run into this problem. But you're saying in this case, we didn't want to add that because that wasn't actually part of the protocol here.
Yeah. And we're relying on, and not only that, we're also relying on like this sort of multiple prompts that are happening, right? Because within DocBench, you have LLM as a judge that's doing its own formatting and moving around of data. So it's kind of tricky. Like even if you did have a prompting system, you also have the prompts that are used in LLM as a judge, which you certainly can't manipulate. And you might find that as data gets passed between these systems, kind of literally just by copying strings, certain information might get lost. It's actually kind of similar to the fundamental problem of RAG, right? You lose context and then things start getting weird. As you're passing things from completion to evaluation, if you don't have control over that, then things can get weird. But obviously you can't have control over it because part of the whole point is that you have a standardized evaluation system. So it's...
Yeah. I would say in this one, I guess I would agree with the score. We were incorrect because we should have said not mentioned, but in reality, we have a very easy way to fix that in production systems that we're not allowed to use in this particular test. And the authors of the test didn't really think that part through. I think it's a weird question because they should know, I think, that LLMs will know this information. And if you don't specifically tell the LLM in the prompt not to do that, it's going to answer the question. If you want to create a fake question with a fake answer, that's safer territory.
Yeah, definitely less amorphous. But this kind of gets to one of the fundamental problems of this. So here we have arrived at the end. So let's get into it. So I think you're right. I think that it would be better for them to create questions that were not in the documents. But part of it kind of confronts with like part of the fundamental thing.
Questions that are not documents that aren't real questions.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So this kind of gets to one of the fundamental problems with not the problems, but all of these data sets focus on different things. I think that's really maybe one of the biggest takeaways you can get from this talk. So DocBench, they wanted a large amount of questions. So one of the things that they did, and this isn't pictured here. One of the things that they did was they used an LLM to help them generate QA pairs, and then they vetted those QA pairs to then add into the data set. So actually, the questions themselves are generated by AI, and then they're editing, manipulating, and curating this data set so that they can get a large amount of questions and answers. And this is great for coverage, but that means that the data set is kind of biased towards what LLMs can see. And if you're asking an LLM to generate questions, it is more likely to generate questions about data that's in the document or and data that it knows about maybe than completely making something up, right? So it's this DocBench specifically used LLMs to create its QA set. So it kind of maybe makes some level of sense that a lot of the questions would be within an LLM's purview and not completely random. Because LLMs are also designed generally and reinforced to not just make stuff up. So it's kind of like this catch-22 a little bit. And this is confronted in basically every data set. There's
another issue here, by the way, when you use LLMs to automatically generate the questions, you're relying you're trusting that LLMs completely understand the documents visually. And we know that the more complex the document, the less likely that is to be true. And so I will say DocBench probably doesn't test a whole variety of super complex images or tables inside documents that the language models might have missed in the first place. I am beyond excited that we're at the top of the leaderboard. I suspect others will go after this and challenge us, and then we'll have to go challenge them and fight to get back on the top. That's how this game goes, but we're at the top today, and it feels pretty good. Well, you got a last comment before I sign us off and tell people to like and share? Got something
yes, it does. Yeah, so it feels good. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm taking Neil's tradition of saying it at the very end. This is the tradition of
learn from the worst.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. I'm super stoked. Please, actually, I do have a request for all of the developers out there. If you have a testing benchmark that you really like, a testing, sort of system that you really like that you would like for us to cover, or a data set that you think that we should apply GroundX to, I would love to know about that because that's something I'm currently very, very interested in. So if you have any of that knowledge, please share. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much. I'm Daniel Warfield.
I'm Neil Katz. See you next time on Ragmasters.